To order. Are you ready, Janet?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't think we have any public comments. So, do we need to approve the minutes?
They were approved at general committee.
Okay. So the first policy is JFABF, Opportunities for Children in Foster Care. And this is an MASC recommended addition.
This is the policy that we reached out to Russ, and his email should be in the packet.
Yeah,
Disappointing, huh?
yeah, it is. Well, you know, the disappointing part is this idea that there's a partnership, which implies that you have some say in what happens and you really don't. So, I mean, we question everything they do and like Russ said, what he suggests is what we do. We always question whether we're the best school for the child. If we are, we are, but you know, a lot of times it's just out of convenience. They don't want to send them back to Worcester Public Schools or wherever they come from, and we're not the best school for them, but then we get them. So once we got them, we got them.
We own 'em.
And yeah, we own them. And
Is that because they believe it's not healthy for their child to be back in the same sort of social or family context that they were in?
that's the claim they usually make. You know, we argue that sometimes that's not true. Sometimes we don't think that based on what we see, because we always have the student
Yeah.
before that, because we have the student when they're here.
But it's
Now
a
they go,
different
now they
climate.
go back to their, right, now they go back to wherever they're, you know, from, but they stay here. As
Oh, I
opposed
see
to
what you're
going back. And I said, well, why don't they go back to the school they came from, which seems like be more appropriate. Well, no, they want to keep them here. So then we own them, and we own the
Well,
transportation
that's the
fund, which
piece
is enormous.
that's the piece that I think is very inappropriate. I could understand, you know, maybe they start going here and, you know, maybe it is in the best interest of that child to continue with the school system. But for the school system now to be responsible for transporting them
Yeah.
from Worcester
Right.
or other
Well, we
out area.
had a student from Boston, and unfortunately, we made a plea that, you know, this is a little beyond.
Far, it's
Yeah,
a far
that,
reach.
You know, somebody else should pay, like, how about the Boston Public Schools as opposed to a school system with a limited budget and you know, 1,000 kids? So they agreed to pay half of it, but, you know, it's time. I mean, the amount of time that Karen spent.
Who made that decision that they would pay half?
It was agreed with the sending district that they would agree
So
to pay
did
half.
DCF facilitate that agreement?
Yeah, they're always involved with it, but, you know,
So
they,
maybe we need to just push for that.
we always
more.
do. We continue to push for that, but ultimately, the way the law is written, as you can see, you know, I sent an email to Russ, and so he got a legal opinion back from, you know, someone in his office. It said, Kim said, that, you know, unfortunately, the policy, the MASC policy reflects the law. It's not like they made a policy. I mean,
Right,
we could just
right.
use the law, so you can't really, there's not a lot of leeway with it. What, at the end of the day, what DCF says essentially goes. And, you know, it's incumbent on us to fight these decisions if we think we should.
Right.
So there's really not a whole lot we can do with this. We were hoping we could
You
change it.
you did propose one thing last time, though, that we could think about, which was not to put the language of the law in the policy. So if the policy is modified, the language of our policy reflects the old law. So we could just have a policy that says we will follow the law. And then if the law changes at some point, then we're at least
Yeah.
staying attuned with that.
Sure.
That was one thing you were saying.
One of the things too that I'm wondering about is, and I think I would suspect that there's an effort to have a good relationship with the organization
Yeah.
that has the program. But there's also, some of the language really talks about arranging for the transportation and paying for it isn't just supposed to automatically go to the district of origin. It's really suggesting that there will be a process to, work on that, work together with DCF and the receiving district. And so I'm thinking, if nothing else, that process should be pushed
Yeah, and we do.
in every situation.
And,
Like,
and we do. Every student we get that comes out of that facility, when there's a decision made, I mean, they always tell us when it happens. When there's a decision made that, the student's gonna go back to their district, but, they want us to keep the student. We go through it, I mean, we don't leave any stones unturned. Karen's been very, very, diligent with that process. So, I mean, at this point, I think there's not a lot we can do with it except continue to, just question why they do what they're doing. And we want to be good partners with them too. It's not like we want, more than that, we want what's best for the kid.
Right.
So if it is best for them, then it is. But, the stuff like transportation, all right, well, we'll keep them, but do we need to pay for the transportation too? Because that's the part that really,
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's,
you think about, look at a special ed budget. Half of it's transportation. That's mostly what we see.
Is there an appeals process?
Yeah, you can appeal, but we did. We appealed this year. We appealed to the Department of Education. That reverts back to the law and says, well, ultimately, this is what happens. And I think at some point, I sent you something that Karen sent to the DESC to appeal a DCF decision, which the DESC said, well, ultimately, we understand, but sorry, this is
DCF.
They get the last word,
and it says, decisions made through this process, meaning after that appeal or resolution process, are not subject to review.
No, so
Tough luck.
yeah. So but we're not the only ones. I've talked to other superintendents who have dealt with this. If you have a foster care facility in your town, a lot of people do. You deal with the same thing, and in fairness to them, their caseload is enormous, and they only spend so much time on this stuff, and they want to move on, and they want to take this problem, this one makes yours, this one is your problem, and then that's it.
And this extra cost could never be applied toward that special education fund that we're establishing, right?
We could pay for we could, because it's an emergency fund, so we could use it.
Not specifically special education.
It's most all of the students is special education.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
so if it's not
Okay.
special education, we cannot, but most of these kids have.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't
was
want-
the added issue.
Right.
But if they're
It
not
is,
special education, then we cannot use that.
Okay,
Fine.
so I just was thinking about not wanting the budget to go haywire if somebody mid-year gets pushed in with these transportation charges attached.
Oh, this would kill a budget, this kind of
Yeah.
thing. You get a couple of these, you get someone in Boston, someone in
Boston's
Springfield.
ridiculous. Oh, we'd end up with somebody in Boston.
We don't have a big budget. I mean, $15-16 million budget.
Right.
It's not a lot. So I mean, there's districts, these big districts, they can absorb a couple $100,000 like that, and you see what it does. I mean, it kills our budget. So, which is all more reason to have a sped reserve fund, so that we can take care of the things we do know is going on and that it is in our control. So it's a good thing we got that done.
So I guess then the question is whether we want to accept this language.
Well, the question I'm wondering about is what you raised, of whether there's any value to having a very generically worded policy rather than, I don't know that it changes, I don't know that it changes the practical, because obviously
Unless the law
the
changes.
people involved are, DCF and you Inc. are well aware of what the law
Yeah.
says.
Yeah, I don't think it
And
does.
it-
I think it's easy for everybody to, because remember, you know, we're reviewing this, the school committee and the superintendent down the road, this law stays the same. They won't be reviewing this, but the situation will come up. I think it's just as easy to have something that they can all look at, and then if they
Okay.
want to refer to the law, they can.
Okay.
All right.
Is
But
the
there's
law
pretty much, if
cited
you look
in
at the
here?
law, pretty much, yeah, the law is cited right
The
in the
ESSA?
last.
ESSA?
Yeah.
Or where?
This Fostering
It says-
Connection Successful Increasing Adoptions Act of 2008,
At the end.
at the end.
Oh, I see. Okay. Got it. Okay. All right, so we propose to keep the language as is.
I would.
I'm sorry, I'm still struggling with, you read the language on transportation and it says, we must collaborate with DCF on how transportation will be provided and arranged. But that's not what it's about at all. It's about, we're it, no
Yeah.
matter what.
Matter of fact, if you read this part right here, that came from
Russ.
From Russ. It actually came from Kimberly, but you know, when it starts off, when the attorney's letter starts off with "unfortunately,"
Yeah.
you know it's not going to go
It's
your
not
way.
gonna be
Yeah.
in our thing. All right, so we
we're well aware of it.
grudgingly accept this
Yeah.
policy.
Well, Karen knows this inside and out now. She really, so anything that comes up, she's right on top of. And so we've had discussions about numerous discussions. And the reality is we do appeal, but at the end of the day, if they say,
Yeah.
it's black, it's black, you know.
But what you're appealing is the decision that student should remain in the Berlin-Boylston district,
Well,
not the transportation
No,
piece.
we've argued both.
Okay.
And so Carol was able to get a partial favorable decision on transportation to say, all right, we'll keep the student, but this is a little ridiculous that we have to
Yeah.
pay transportation every day from, greater
So,
Boston
yeah.
area. And that's,
Yeah.
Where-
and we also argued, given our size, that amount of money really destroys our budget, has a major impact. And so if it impacts our budget, it impacts kids.
Right.
So,
Right.
so we continue, Karen has appealed a few of them. That's the closest we got was like a partial decision on it, so.
And the problem, I think I asked this last time too, I just want to understand in which direction this is the biggest problem. So a student is at the Ewing program, and so they're attending school in Berlin-Boylston, and then the decision is made that they should continue to attend this school, but they are living in a foster family in Boston or in Worcester or in some other
Right.
community. It's not the opposite where we own that student, but now the best interest is for that child to go to Boston public schools. And we have to somehow,
That hasn't happened.
okay.
Yeah, no.
Well, that
'cause-
makes sense,
Yeah,
because it's really where they live.
Yeah, because where they live is where they go to, where they sleep, the law is where you put your head down, is
Yeah.
where you go to school. So that's how we get them, as soon as they come here, they start attending our schools. And again, we're okay with that, but it's the other thing. I mean, we'll take our responsibility while it's ours, but when it's not, we shouldn't now have to assume somebody else has to pick something up here. And it's usually it's never like someone from Clinton or Hudson or a town right there. It's always, these towns far away.
Is this a new development? Is it relatively new as far as the law? Or has this law been in place for a really long time?
Well, I haven't dealt with it, so I'm not positive, but it's my discussions with Karen is it's relatively new, or at least the enforcement of it is.
And
So-
is there any advocacy happening around this. We can't be the only district.
Oh, no, that's what I'm
that are-
saying. When I go to the collaborative meetings, we're not the only ones having it. If you have a DCF facility in your town, you have this problem. And even the bigger towns, you know, like the bigger towns around here, I mean, nobody's big like a Worcester, or there's only certain districts that have budgets that are that big where they can do that. And they're like, you know, it has to be like a Springfield or a Boston, one of those greater Boston area schools, like a town like Natick with a really big budget. Any of those kind of towns can do it. These towns out here, and you know, it could be worse. You know, we could be further west in a really small town, a really kind of undeveloped town, these small regional towns, and you know, pick up someone from Worcester or something. Yeah, so
Okay.
sorry about that one.
So, yeah,
Well, we tried. That was a good suggestion to send it off and have somebody else think
Yeah.
about it. All right, so that goes forward to school committee. Okay.
the next one is electronic communication policy, and I think last time this went to the school committee as first read, is that right?
It did, and then you asked to bring it back to policy because some of the Facebook pages you were considering creating, and there was question about who could respond and what they could respond to.
Oh, that was based on Jim's,
Right. Yeah,
oh,
my,
I forgot about that.
Yeah, that was, yeah, it was whether I think it really came down to whether it was if you had a site like that, who, is it the chair who maintains it and responds to a question, or
Or designee,
a designee?
because we had
Yeah.
proposed language to allow sort of a designee.
I
Forget
think,
what the language was
yeah.
that we proposed, but.
my concern is that I don't think we want a whole bunch of social media platforms created by subcommittees.
Right, well, that's
I
true.
think what we were thinking with the language we had originally talked about was just that the chair can delegate the right to respond to social media for a subcommittee that may be dealing with
Right.
a topical issue. That's different than what Jim was describing,
Yeah.
which really was setting up a Facebook page as a form of community engagement, and that, you know, the subcommittee is gonna manage that and respond to that.
Yeah,
And I think that's a little bit different. And I would feel discomfort with that not going through the chair at all, or not having you have the opportunity to be involved
Yeah.
in formulating responses.
Well, I think logically, when you think about this, subcommittees report to the committee. There's nothing, like this committee.
yeah, there's no
You know,
rule.
you as subcommittee members, you don't decide whether whether a policy flies.
Correct.
You make a suggestion and it goes to the committee. So maybe there can be some language in there that's just the same. You know, that anything, that if there's a Facebook page that developed by any subcommittee, that it mirrors the practices of the committee. Everything must be approved. Anything on that site must be approved by the general committee. I think it's probably as simple as that it doesn't get out there until.
Yeah, but what you're approving then is the page itself and the person's role, but not what then happens on that page.
No, you would
right?
have to approve content. That's what they do here.
Every response a person might make to something?
Well, are they there? Is
See,
it
that's hard to do.
is it there to respond to?
Well, that inevitably happens is the thing. I think you have to foreshadow that because,
Oh, absolutely.
you know, that's what those pages are meant to do.
Yeah,
There's
that's why I
an
don't have it.
immediacy. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's why I don't have anything to do with it. So,
I mean, what we had proposed before was to add a clause 2C that would state that school committee chair could delegate authority to a subcommittee chair to respond via email or social media if the issue is in the domain of that subcommittee.
Yeah,
That's a response item. Like, it's okay
Right.
for you to deal with that because that's in your. Additionally, the superintendent and school committee chair are to be kept informed of these communications. But there's nothing here about setting up a page. So I guess, a separate page. My inclination would be to say that setting up specific social media sites or pages would need to go to the committee
Yeah.
for discussion and approval.
Well, can the page be set up so that there isn't, that it's just, there's just
One way.
one-way communication, that it,
Yeah, you can
and
shut
that it
off
can be
the
noted
comments
on it
and-
that this page is only for communication, to the public. This page does not take questions.
Yeah,
You
I
can
just-
say something like this is, I wouldn't say communication, because they can't respond back, so they, informational only.
Yeah.
Any questions or
Just
concerns,
why-
please contact the superintendent's office,
Like, why
or,
would that be useful to set a separate
I was
page for
just-
that? We already can.
Yeah, well, I don't know that when we were talking about this in the other committee, for the goal, I don't know that it was gonna happen. I think it was a suggestion. But I think it was a suggestion based on, well, we had to get this committee together. He was trying to form a committee of outside, of community members. We didn't get any responses when, and I know Jim's gonna try again. But that was gonna be one of the discussion things, should we have a Facebook page or, to me, like, I wouldn't have even an educational one of my own, because I'm not gonna put stuff up that I wouldn't put on our page.
Yeah.
And I certainly wouldn't answer the public's questions on our page, right? I'm not gonna have this, like a superintendent answering. That's,
Yeah.
Right, no, and
You
you
know.
shouldn't. Yeah, I think my reaction to the idea of an informational page is that's not really engagement, right? To me, that would frustrate the public more than be helpful, because they can't ask a question or they can't make a comment about it. I personally, I think we're dealing with two different issues here in a way. The issue of community engagement is one that I don't think social media is the answer. I think it's much more about,
yeah.
You engaging with the community,
Yeah.
coffee chats, having
We
an
got parent
opportunity.
camp, that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. We
Yeah.
got a ton of people there. We got 200 people at that,
Yeah.
in each of those events. So to me, setting those kind of social things that have some kind of informational piece to them, that's the kind of stuff I look for, because I don't like the social media stuff. Plus whatever you put out there can be misinterpreted pretty easily.
Yeah, you can't
It's like
control
text,
it.
what you say, I had a tone. I didn't really mean it that way.
Yeah,
Right.
So
right.
it's just easier for me to do things like parent camps. And so those are the kind of events that I look for,
So there's nothing specific, the only references in this policy so far have to do with electronic communications. There's not really mention of social media per se, which is, these tend to suggest more email type exchanges, but I'm just scanning to see if that's true, but it feels that way when I'm reading this. Receipt of an electronic communication.
You're right, it's not really reflective of social media. This is more about getting information via email, getting emails.
Is that typically what electronic communications is referring to, or could it include social
I
media?
think it could include social media, because you can send and receive messages.
Yeah, comments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does describe it as it can includes, among other things, messages exchanged via social media.
Where was that?
In the very
Second paragraph.
beginning,
First
second paragraph.
Second paragraph.
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
another whole element of setting up some kind of a Facebook page, is that if there's a hot topic and people are responding, it's not beyond the realm of possibility that multiple school committee members will weigh in, and then you're running into
Yeah.
open meeting law violations.
Oh, that's true. Or
So-
possibly conflicting information.
Correct. But
You could set something up that doesn't have, you could set up a page, a social media page that doesn't, that allows for them to ask questions that you answer in like an FAQ kind of manner. If you got enough of these questions,
Yeah.
then you just have a big FAQ page that, that you
pull
continue
questions.
to, that you continue to answer as a committee.
Right. Yes, they're
But that
not just on the fly.
They're not
Yeah.
just on the fly.
Yeah.
And maybe, I know there's an immediacy to that, but maybe that's not how you develop, if you're gonna develop a page like that, maybe that's not, maybe if you get enough questions on something and it's laid out on the page, this page is there to answer questions that get frequently asked,
that's actually a very good idea.
something like that. We did it for the alternative structured learning day thing where we'll keep on adding, and we actually met once, now that we're official. But I want to keep on adding to those because the
Snow
parents
day.
there, they keep on asking questions. I'm thinking, okay, that's a good question. Let's put that on an FAQ page.
Yeah,
So eventually that FAQ page will be on our alternative learning day tab, right? So anybody goes on there will be able to, so
right.
I don't expect that they're gonna, they may call and ask Chrissy a question, but hopefully they can go there and there's enough of those. I've been to some pages where they have 3, 4, 5 pages
Yeah.
of questions. Eventually you get the one that you asked,
So why,
I
so we
like-
have the capacity to do that already.
On the website, we do.
And do they have a,
We don't, no, school committee doesn't have a social media page. And the district doesn't have a district
they have a
social
link
media
though?
page.
So does the school committee have a link on our page?
They have a link on our website,
On the
yes.
website, but
on
not
the social media.
Not on Facebook. I actually think that something like that could be helpful.
Maybe that can be a link on their, maybe it can be a page on
Yeah,
their
it-
link, so.
yeah, it absolutely
it's not-
can
So
be.
that way, it's not a separate school committee page. Because it just assumes you're a separate entity, and even though you are,
Yeah, right.
you're connected to the school, so under the school committee link on our page, why couldn't you have a place where someone could ask a question that's a little more active, and then, and you can collect those, and you can start a page.
But that's different than being on Facebook. I mean, on Facebook, anybody can go look, you're requiring people to get to the website. First of all, it's not that easy to get to
Oh, yeah, that's
anything
another
on
one of
our
my- I know.
website.
Where's that webmaster?
But I think
I know.
I think Facebook is more, it would be more social, it would be more
Yeah.
out there.
But maybe something where the expectation is that you don't answer
No, I love that
right away.
idea.
Because you couldn't get to it anyway.
Nope.
And you couldn't do it as a committee if you answered it right away, and then somebody's on the hook to answer.
The only other issue is if you allow questions, you can't avoid comments. Because how are you going to discern between a question and a comment?
Can I back us up for a second? Because I feel like we're having the conversation that the engagement committee should be having. And so I'm wondering if we can back out to policy. So ultimately it feels like they, whatever is proposed for this kind of social media page or posting on a pre-existing social media site, needs to go through the school committee and be approved. I mean, that's the bottom line, right? I mean, it has to be, somebody has to think it through and make a proposal
Yeah.
to the
Well, from
school
a policy standpoint, then it's just a simple comment. All comments will be subject to school committee. All responses from school committee members will be subject to school committee review. And that will cover.
And all, even the establishment of a Facebook page, or so I shouldn't just anchor on Facebook, it might be on any number of
Yeah.
sites, but
So that way, if it's subject to school committee review, anything you do like that, even an FAQ page, would have to come to the school committee to some kind of review. Okay, this is what we're gonna put on there, and then you approve it, and then it gets on the gets on the page. And you could do it as part of your school committee meetings, you know, once every couple of months or once a month, you know, maybe at every monthly.
Could we set up a generic school committee email?
Yeah, info at
Like,
school committee
yeah,
kind of
and
thing,
then
yeah.
I can receive it and I can collect questions and bring it to the committee.
Yeah, we could do it
Answer.
that way. But I think they're talking about having like an actual Facebook page. I guess you could do that too, collect the questions and then they,
Right.
yeah.
And if it was viewable by the committee chair could stay on top of it if there's any burning kind of thing going on.
Maybe we take the questions here and then the Facebook page, they know that if you have a question, send it here. We will then send it to the committee for review and the response will be on the Facebook page.
I think Susan is correct, though, that we're getting into logistics of how to set up a page or whatever. I think from a policy point of view, this really doesn't speak very much to social media, but I'm wondering if there's even a need to, it's basically saying all electronic communications have to go through this process. Maybe what we're really recommending is no change to that.
Well, let's think about it. So let's think about if you were Jim and you were having these ideas about social and community engagement through a Facebook, and you were reviewing this, would it answer what he needs to know? Between committee members and the public? 2. That's receiving. See, this one, 2A refers specifically to email.
Yeah.
Well, we had originally decided to add a 2C to that as well.
There is a 2C here already.
We're gonna add a statement to 2C.
Oh, yeah.
And that was relative to the,
Will state the school committee chair could delegate authority to a subcommittee chair to respond via email or social media if the issue is in the domain of that subcommittee.
but I'm not uncomfortable with that wording, because that doesn't say the school committee chair is delegating the opportunity to a committee to set up a Facebook page and respond to every Facebook post.
Yeah.
It's really just saying that the communication is still kind of coming through the chair, but he may say,
Or you take
Jim,
this,
you're
yeah.
working
Or
on
Jim, you
this, why
take
don't
this
you
question."
respond to this question? But I don't even know if we need that
I was
in
reading
some
that
ways.
a little bit differently. So you were reading that to me.
But what in here, there's nothing in here that says that, what in here doesn't say that if there's an electronic communication, it doesn't have to go to the committee. I mean, most of this says it does,
Correct.
right? So whether it's, it doesn't address Facebook, but if it talks about communication in general, there's nothing in there, unless I missed something, that says you can do it by yourself. Everything says it has to go through the committee. So if you set up a Facebook page, it would have to go through the committee, right?
I think what I would propose that we consider is not modifying this policy, but that the Community Engagement Committee pursue options that sort of are within the framework that we've talked about. I think we're all in agreement that one of the things we don't want to see is the opportunity for various people to set up random Facebook posts, pages, and reply to comments that have
Right.
no vetting through the school committee.
And I think with this policy, they can't do that.
Right.
Doesn't sound like it.
Right. And then I think the second issue is to really provide the same input that you provided today provide to the engagement committee, which is there is an opportunity for us to improve communication with the public by putting out information, facts about a topic or
Yeah.
about a number of topics, inviting questions, but responding through FAQs that are vetted and developed and can be
Yeah.
thoughtful. Okay.
So I want to just clarify something for a minute, because in your reading of this 2C proposed language that we had,
Yeah. I'm suggesting we not put that in.
not put that in at all.
Yeah, I would agree, because read this again.
Sure
I don't
why.
see anything that says that somebody can just go off, make a page, and respond themselves. It seems like this policy covers that you're not allowed, a school committee member is not allowed under this policy to communicate directly unless they have express permission from the chair.
Right.
It looks like that.
Right.
So even though it doesn't say Facebook, the implication, it's explicit that electronic communications need to go through the committee. So I agree, looking at this again, maybe we don't need to complicate this more, maybe.
I thought that we had wanted the chair to be able to delegate authority in some cases.
But I think
Well, I think they
we're
can.
saying this doesn't
Here.
preclude that.
Yeah. I think it says it, well, it says the chairperson will not respond on behalf of the committee. So that it says for sure, on page
Rich.
3.
So-
Right before B, there's that paragraph there.
Actually, if you look at 2.3, it talks about the chairperson shall take one or more of the following actions. I'm wondering, maybe we could add a 6th option, which is that the chair may delegate the response to.
I thought I saw that someplace.
Yeah, because I think there may be things that come up. I think
Yeah.
somebody gave the example before where somebody posts something, and if you don't respond in a timely manner, all this like slew of reactions happen online, whereas you could somebody could clarify it quite quickly and cut that off. So I feel like it should be explicit.
So is it something like the chair may delegate the responsibility to respond to a committee member?
Yes, I mean, it's basically the language we have here. Will state the school committee chair could delegate authority to a subcommittee chair to.
Well, I don't, but it
doesn't
may
have to be
not.
subcommittee.
No.
To another member, to a school committee member, to respond via email or social media if the issue, just period, may delegate it.
That could be number 6.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
Yeah, sure, I think that's a good idea.
The only issue is that 2A, under which all that list falls, is referring to email. So maybe we change
Just
that
change that to
to
electronic.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay, so the chair may delegate the authority to respond to a school committee member, period? Is that,
Yeah. I
Okay.
think so.
Yeah, I think just as simple as that.
Yeah.
And then change that to electronic communication from email.
Yeah, and so, so in terms of Jim's idea, this is all about response, right? It's not about establishing something new.
no, on some level, is there a community engagement policy?
I don't think so.
I wonder if the
Not expressly.
committee that's working on that could be a down the road output from
Yeah.
that group that sort of lays out some policy around, you know, what are the principles of strong community engagement? What are the tools that that the district will use? Okay.
Yeah. I guess they might want to do a regulation
Yeah.
that's connected to this, like
Okay.
BHE-R or something like that, that doesn't go in the policy manual, but it's a regulation for how that's done, if you want.
The other thing about the title of this policy is it doesn't call out that this is a school committee. This is pertaining only to school committee, right? And, you know, some of the other kinds of policies, you know, we have a policy, and this is an exhibit policy, but it says school committee guidelines for public comment, school committee review of procedures. So, and it's particular to school committee, it'd be good to have that in the heading.
Yeah.
Because I think we want to make sure that these don't, or these get pulled out and communicated to new school committee members. They're really aware of the things that pertain directly to them.
I think that's a good point. And it is only pertaining to school committee, because, okay,
It seems like.
let's move to the next one.
How did you want to word the title again? You wanna read
Just
it?
add school committee in front of electronic
Okay.
communication policy. School
Okay.
committee electronic communication policy.
Okay, policy ADC, smoking tobacco products on school property. I'm guessing this,
This was one that you had asked me to
Yeah.
send to Diane and
That
Sally.
was my request, yeah.
And they said that they thought everything that they needed to enforce the policy was in the policy already, and it was fine.
Okay, all right, I wanted to make sure it was reflecting current
Yes,
practices.
and they
needs,
said
yeah.
everything was good with that
Good,
one.
great.
yeah, they even have, or other similar products that rely on vaporization. Okay, so that is okay. Assignment of students to schools. Is this not a policy we currently have? It's a MASC?
Oh, I know where this came from.
This is a policy that, due to regionalization, we were anticipating the request of people to do an in-district transfer among the elementary schools.
Yeah,
So we wanted to, I had reached out to a couple of schools. Wachusett sent me their, they don't have a specific policy, but that was their form that they sent.
Procedure.
Yeah, their procedure. And
Yeah.
Spencer said they did not allow it at all. So it was looking for similar regional districts. MASC suggested policy JCA as a guideline to it, and so Jeff wanted to bring it to the committee to see if you guys wanted to add
it
or
doesn't
subtract something about
yeah,
school
I mean, this
choice.
doesn't have to be a policy.
There's language in the regional agreement.
Yeah, so I just brought it up because,
That'd be good to know, yeah.
I just bring it up because,
Yeah,
now that we're regionalized.
Yeah,
It doesn't have to be a policy. We'll have a procedure in place to do this. So if you don't, if it's not a problem, we will,
What I would do, I don't think it's a bad thing to have a specific procedure outlined, but I would go back to the regionalization agreement. My recollection, which is very vague, is that we left it up to the discretion of the superintendent, and that it should be in the best interest of the child.
right, so we would write a procedure for it. So I didn't know, I just wanted to bring it up because we're going through all of the regionalization stuff. So I
Yeah.
don't think anything has to be done here, but I just so wanted to make you aware of it.
Yep.
So no policy, we'll just have our
We'll make a-
procedure,
we'll have
we'll make
a- we'll
our
have a
own
new
in-house procedure.
And just refer to the regionalization agreement.
We will have a procedure that we'll talk to the committee about. We'll bring it before the committee, say this is what we've been doing, and it's in line with the regionalization agreement, so we'll work on that.
And I think one of the issues that came
Let us know
up,
what the language is in that agreement, again, would you just...
Yeah, we'll bring it all to the committee, just as an informational piece.
So we don't currently have GCA on file, is that right?
No, we don't.
Okay.
No, we
don't.
don't. We don't.
JCA.
Because that would only be for a regional school
Yeah.
district.
all right, and then there are 2 sets of policies recommended for removal.
Yes, you had asked me to gather all the policies that end in R and end in E for your review for removal.
Yes, so I thought that was gonna be simple, but I actually looked at a bunch of them and had questions about some. So can we look at the Rs first for a minute?
I would say also that the recommendation should be that they get removed from the school committee policy manual, but they be kept on record in a
Yes.
separate place, because I know I
Yeah.
refer to them a
Oh,
lot,
yeah.
because to take these out, I mean, I might want to change it at some point, but there were some, you know, sometimes there's a fine line between the regulation and the policy. You know, the
Yeah,
regulation is
uh-huh.
just some a little more specific. So as I go through these odds, there are some things like on the transportation in particular that what I would like to do is pull some of the language and put it into our travel policy, because we've worked a lot on it, and it really does it does impact the safety of students. And the issue of transportation, with transporting students in vans, it's one of these areas that the more I read it, the more nobody wants to say do it or don't do it. But if something happens, it'll be a problem. We've gone through this with Russ a couple times, and I'll give you an example of something we're going through now. The vans that they use now, schools all of the time rent 12 and 15 passenger vans. Now, the Department of Motor Vehicles, or the safety board, says, you know, those aren't, we're not going to tell you, it's not illegal to use them. There's no law that says you can't use them. But it's recommended that you don't use those, that you actually use this other type of bus, like a multi-function something bus, right? So that's what the transportation board recommends. So our teachers say, well, it's not against the law, why can't we rent them? We've been renting these things for 20 years. So Bob and I have been going through this process until we find a solution. We've been making up the difference so that they can pay for this other van, because now it's like one of these things, once you start having the conversation, you're discussing it, there's no pleading ignorance here. You clearly knew that there was an advisory here. And I always, I equate it to, like planes, right? I mean, it's once they go down, if you find out there were 10 advisories about this pot, well, it's not illegal to have the pot. Well, now it goes down, you get 3 planes going down. It's like, well, there was an advisory. Well, they didn't tell us to ground the planes. They just said that it may happen. This is the same kind of thing. And so, like Russ said, if you got an advisory, you should probably think about not letting teachers use those vans on trips. Well, okay, what's the alternative? You either have to buy, like some districts buy one of the other safe ones that everybody says you can use, or you have to find someone that rents them. So we're in the process of doing that. So some of the language we worked on last year on JJHR, I think should go into the policy, because it also talks about when we can drive. Remember we did that last year.
Yeah.
So
because statistically, the accidents happen between 11
Like 11
and 3 or
right.
something.
So at a later meeting, I'll bring that policy. I'll pull that out, and we'll just change the language. So you can delete it now, but I'll pull the language from it and say, this is what I recommend from our old JJHR. So I'll go over that with Christy for a meeting down the road. I don't see anything wrong with deleting it, as long as people have gone through them and say, okay, what do you want to pull out of this? And so we actually can delete these. I think we can go through them for further meetings though and say, okay, let's pull this language out and this language if it's really important to the policy.
Yeah, I think the only concern that sort of crossed my mind is in your domain, is how to make sure that those regulations and exhibits, when I pull those, don't become sort of disassociated from the policies they're supposed to be right? Because they're sitting on different shelves or in different rooms, in different locations, and people
Yeah.
don't see them so attached. And even that one a policy might be modified, and the associated regulation or exhibit doesn't get modified in response to that, right? Because they're just they become separate.
So I don't think they do, because one of the things is, I mean, the only reason we look at any of these policies or regulations because something comes up. I mean, usually it's like, well, was there a policy for that? And I always ask, say to Chris, do we have a policy?
Right, but
on this
then it's
topic?
got to go to the regulation or the form that's associated with it, or the,
Right, but I would always check
But
that. I
they,
mean,
yeah,
as we
they would
research
bring
it, I
that
mean, we would.
forward to
That's why I think
us
they
and-
should not be thrown. They should be thrown out. They should be.
no.
The vote should be to delete them from the policy manual, but keep them in a separate binder for reference.
District use,
Yeah, because I used them. As a matter of fact,
Yeah.
I used the regulations more than the policy.
Yeah.
Because it's got
Yeah.
more specific regulation, and it's probably something that was written by some administrator, probably a superintendent took the policy and wrote the regulation just to put the specifics down. 'Cause
Right.
you know, but again, some of them, they're so close that, like in my view, it really should be in the policy. Like that safety stuff should be in the policy, because that way you have more leverage too.
Yeah,
know,
so
when you're saying-
we have to be careful about stream. That's why I was spending time taking a look at some of these, the body of some of these,
Yeah.
to see, you know, there were some things that were forms.
Those are the exhibit
Those
issues,
seems
yeah.
very, well, I thought that, weren't there some in the R's too? that were
Yeah,
forms?
there could be. There.
And I was thinking those are easy to take out. Those clearly are not policy, they're in your domain,
Yeah.
they should go, just without anything. There's nothing there should be in the policy. But there were some R documents that had some things that I thought, for instance, the JJR had, let me just go back to what JJR was. It dealt with it's talked about a lot of equity issues. And I felt like when I looked at the policy itself, that wasn't reflected in the policy. Then I found, well, there is something about equity in the JB policy, but
I
not
have
in
an
the
extra in my
JJ
office.
one. I just wondered if we should be folding that equity language and concepts from the R document into the policy itself. And I also wondered about, so that's one issue that sort of
Yeah.
jumped out at me. And then, so maybe let's talk about that first, and I'll come back to a couple of other questions that came up for me. So JJ, what's JJ? Let me just go back into it.
JJR.
JJR, yeah. Student travel regulations? Is
That's JJH.
Oh, yeah, that didn't sound right. Okay, let's see.
So this is the one you were referring to, actually, of that there is some information that.
JJR, co-curriculars and extracurricular activities.
Oh,
So there's reference to sort of equal spending and equal opportunities, and reference to teams for males and females. And when you look at the JJ document, the policy document,
these are really in any order.
Yeah, they should be alphabetical by.
Yeah, it goes from IHBG to
the JJ,
JJIF. So it's,
IJ, yeah, that's right. IJ. ABCDEF GHIJ, yeah.
right, but there were JJs before that.
Oh.
JLCD. So the J's are not all together.
Okay.
That's all. I'm
so
just,
in the JJ policy, co-curricular and extracurricular activities, it just says that there will be, it's a means for developing wholesome attitudes with human relations, okay? Here's some guidelines for the organization of student activities. And none of them have to do with equity issues, but when you go into the JJR document, there's a lot of reference to sort of equal opportunity. And I just felt like, well, that should be in the policy. That's a guiding principle for us, is to make sure that students have fair and equal access to these extracurricular activities. But
Yeah, no, I don't
say that-
disagree. I think we'll find that in a lot of these. That's why I say that I think we should just vote to, my suggestion would be just to vote to remove them from the policy manual.
But there are modifications, I don't want to lose.
No, I think-
Core principle that's represented in a.
Well, you won't, because, like I said, I'll
It
bring
should be- It's a
JJH.
policy issue. The
Well, that's
equity
what I'm
issue is
saying.
a policy.
I'll bring JJH back to this committee to pull some stuff out of art to put it in the policy.
Here's my recommendation, is that we can vote to remove those from the school committee policy, but that they are retained, and that there's a process of systematic review by the superintendent or whoever you designate to review for language that really needs to be moved to policy, and then bring that back to the policy subcommittee.
Or we could just say that the policy subcommittee will systematically review the regulations. Because there are a couple that stick out to me that I definitely want the language to be in the policy.
All right.
Because I think it just reinforces the policy.
Right.
Even though it's very specific, I think it's important to have it in there, mostly because some of it's part of an actual law, right? That you can't travel between this time and this time. So that really shouldn't be, it should be the policy. Is, the law says you don't travel at this time, you don't travel at this time.
Right, you don't want it to be a question mark.
Right, yeah.
So it's just a matter of burden of process here, because the way I was looking at this is, well, let's not take anything out until we've done that work, rather than taking it out and then hoping that it's going to cycle back in.
No, I don't think it's a hope. I think it's an expectation that we go back and start reviewing these. I don't think it's we pull them out. I mean, they'll be where we can start to continue to review these.
Well, the bottom line is they don't belong in the policy manual,
Well,
but
as a
individual-
regulation document. But
Correct.
some of the content of those
And
does
we're
belong.
being assured that through this committee, that process of review is going to happen.
Okay, I'd like to know, I would like to specify them by when is that going to be coming back in?
Well, I continually do it. I'm going to bring one next month. I mean, our next
Well, I
policy.
mean, if we take
committee.
out this we're taking out a block of documents here.
Well, I mean, you can decide. I mean, you can go through them too. And I mean, I just pick out the ones that, that
That's what
strike me. But I mean, something might strike you that doesn't.
Right,
I
so.
mean, the equity strikes me because it's going to be one of my goals this year. So
Yeah,
that's something
yeah.
I will review. I haven't, but this one it's just come up yesterday again. So I
Right.
want to make sure that it goes into some of the language. I've already kind of started going through it, goes into it. So, but I'll continue to I'll continue to review them.
So one thing that might be helpful is for you to identify the ones that you feel are high priorities. But Susan, for you to also feel free to do that and share that with him, that here are the policies I've seen, or here are
Okay.
the regulations or exhibits I've observed that I think have language that maybe should be in policy. And then maybe we could undertake a systematic review, do 3 policies at every,
Yeah.
3 of these at every.
I don't have anything on the docket until the next MASC review comes out, so
Okay.
everything that MASC has recommended we review is complete with this meeting. So
Wow.
if we set up monthly, we can go through them.
Okay.
All right, so I'll
good.
send what I have in my notes your way, Jeff. and
Well,
we
send
can
it-
kind of.
Can you send the policy and the regulation with some? Because I I start making notes on the regulation for JJH-R, so I'm gonna give it to Christie and say, this is what I think for the next meeting.
Yep.
And just highlight it, this is what I think should go.
Okay.
Once we take this out and put it into the policy, then it's there, then that regulation's done. We can keep it aside, but it's done.
Okay.
If you send it to me, then I can keep track on a running agenda
Yeah,
for
yeah.
next meeting.
Okay. Just want to look at this for a second.
Why don't we just put marks on it?
There was, yeah, just in terms of the content, there was a regulation, the homeschooling regulation document that said that parents could attend, their kids could attend the public schools on a part-time basis. But we had dealt with that in the
Yeah,
policy.
we
Yeah.
did deal with
So
it, yeah.
that's an example of where I wondered how do the regulations keep up to date with changes in the policy?
Someone didn't make a change there, or something
Oh, the
happened,
regulation,
yeah.
we
Oh,
changed
yeah,
the
no,
policy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the policy that policy reflects the law, and I think we went over that.
Yeah, we
so-
did, but it's still in the regulations.
Well, that's why that one should just be taken out, because it's just not, the policy covers the actual thing, the regulation didn't keep up, so.
Okay. All right. So
And
I'll send-
there's some instances, well, I don't even need the regulations, it says, then I don't do it. If it says don't do it, then we just don't.
All right, so I'll send these notes that I made on the regulations to you and Christie.
So the last two items that I think
Oh, yeah, the exhibits, are you going to the exhibits?
I was thinking we were following the same procedure in
Okay,
the
well, hang on
exhibits.
for a second. So one question I had was that some of these pertain, again, kind of like the policies, remember the policy we were just talking about that pertains directly to school committee? Some of the exhibits were like that. They pertain directly to school committee or to our roles or responsibilities. And I'm wondering if we should be keeping those or keeping them at the back of the policy manual somehow. I don't want those to go out of our sight, because I've got a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that pertain to us, so I don't want to see them disappear.
You can have an exhibit manual, but they shouldn't be in the policy manual. I mean, that's clear from the MASC that these should not be in there. I mean, they can be, you can have a school committee exhibit manual if you wanted.
Yeah,
See
well,
why
I
you
think we
couldn't
should
establish something like that, but.
Yeah, unless these aren't useful to us at all, I feel like we should hang on to those.
So why don't you include those 5 that you have that question about in our agenda for the next meeting as well? We can look at the exhibits in policy.
Exhibit. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not gonna delete these, I'm just gonna transfer them from the policy manual and have 2 separate, one regulation manual, one exhibit manual. So they're
Yeah,
not
but
gonna
But the
disappear.
regulation manual is gonna really be in the district's domain. We're not gonna be looking at that.
But
right?
we can bring back whatever you have questions on and add it to policy if that's necessary.
Yeah, I just feel like when you take the exhibits out, they're not really in our view anymore. That's my concern, is how to keep them in view if they're important.
So we'll look at those 5 that you have specific
Yep.
concerns.
Do you have the 5 there? Do you have them noted?
I do.
So,
You just send them,
yeah, okay.
we'll create an agenda for our next meeting based on that.
Okay, I'll send these notes off. Okay.
All right, so my question, we need to schedule our next meeting, but also, before we do that, I just want to ask if there are other areas of policy concern or new policy development that we're interested in putting on an agenda.
Well, first, as a backup, and unless I misunderstood something here, we had in the 411 minutes, meeting minutes, 3 policies still to do, and I didn't, did we do them? I didn't see them. JJF, which was student activity accounts, MASC had recommended changes.
Yes,
Yes, what?
that was approved. Your recommendation was approved at the, I believe it was the May 2nd meeting. I'm sorry, it
No.
wasn't May 2nd. It was May 21st.
Approved May 21.
Yep. It was a very, they were all very, very minute changes, and they were brought forth at the committee meeting.
These are
Same
ones
with
Bob
BEDG
brought.
Yes, Bob had brought them.
And EFD,
Yeah.
meal charging policy.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. I didn't see, they were in the April 11th, so that you're saying that happened in May.
Yes, we brought them over. I brought them to the whole committee on May 21st.
Okay, great, thank you. All right. No, I don't have anything new in my mind. I want to make sure we clean this stuff up, the regulations and exhibitions.
Okay. Is there anything on your plate that you think needs?
No, same thing, I gotta go through the rest of the regulations, and,
Is there anything
Policy
else that
stuff.
pertains to regionalization that would fall in here that we should be attending to?
in terms of policy,
Yeah.
let me just scroll down, we just did that. No,
I don't think so. I think everything's pretty much
no, but I mean,
Covered.
most of it's in the regional agreement. Trying to think if there's anything in there that just would ultimately be a policy.
Should we take a look again at that regional agreement, maybe, just put it in front of ourselves to think about whether there's policy?
Well, we could in relation to the policy we talked about, just to see that language. There's, I think I'd also check with Bob on, he's really been keeping us,
Yeah,
Bob Conrad?
yeah, he's been keeping us on track as far as planning for the regionalization.
there's a regional checklist too that's in, was part of my goals. So that's something you could probably go through. Those are all of the things we have to do to regionalize, and so most of those have been completed, but some haven't. So that might give you an idea of something, might trigger something that there should be a policy around. Because if it does, we can check to see if in the regional schools, they have a policy. Because we won't have, like, there's a lot of regional policies that we wouldn't have. Some we would, but we've never had elementary schools as part of a region. So there's probably a whole list of regional policies that we just haven't got to yet. That might be a conversation with the MASC though, you
Yeah, I
know,
think it would be.
to see if there's any, or Mars, to see if there's any regional, but they don't usually do policy stuff.
No, Mars told me they don't get
Yeah.
into policy.
But
Okay, so MASC.
the MASC would probably have something related to,
Just what
I'll
we should
check
be
at my
checking.
conference too, 'cause I
Okay.
see them.
Yeah.
Say, you know, are there any policies that may have slipped through that
Or I can
that are related to elementary schools that we haven't seen? that
contact Dorothy. And
Dorothy
see.
might know, yeah.
I think it isn't a bad idea for us to review both the checklists, but also to look at the regionalization agreement again, to just
Yeah,
kind of take a quick look and,
Yeah.
so we want to kind of close up the year feeling, or start the year feeling like, okay, we're on top of that.
Okay. So next meeting dates, do we want to do that now, or do you want to have Christy chase me down?
I'd like to do it while you're here.
Yeah.
yeah.
One question I got from Cliff. Would either of you be available on June 26th?
June 26th.
Yeah, we don't have a quorum for the 25th meeting.
I won't be here.
You won't be here. I won't be here.
June 20th. We don't have a quorum for the 25th.
We don't have a quorum.
We don't.
That's my perpetual conflict,
Oh, yeah.
No.
but others apparently have conflicts too. I could be here for the 26th, but if he's not around, I don't think that's a good thing to do.
Who else can't? Am I the only one who can't make it to 26? Since it's my review, I should be there, right?
I can. I wasn't planning on it, but I can be. So I don't think Jim is going to be back from his business trip. So I think Lori would make a quorum if she's available. I haven't checked with Angela and Keith definitively, but
Yeah, I mean, if that's the only,
yep.
it's the only time they can make it, I'll scratch that vacation day. Just another one. Maybe I'll get some time off between now and, that was my goal.
Yep.
Well, don't come in that day. Just
Come in for the meeting. That's what I'm going to do.
That ruins the whole vacation. Jeez, I might
know.
as well come in, I might as well come and get something done.
I hear you.
So yeah.
Yeah, I can do it the
Okay,
26th.
so-
Okay. the
I'll
20
just switch my date for
Okay.
the
The
25th.
25th is no quorum, so.
I'm going to work in Westerly anyway, so whether I do it Tuesday or Wednesday.
All right, so next meeting, are we looking at the fall? Or when are we looking?
I don't know. I feel like it might be good if we could get another meeting in this summer to do some of this cleanup stuff.
Start the year
It might
clean.
feel better
Yeah.
to start the year.
Can we do an
without-
August one?
Yeah.
Because July's tough for everybody.
Yeah. No, that's
If I
Plus
take
you're
any
also-
time off, it's July.
Well, you're booted out of this building in
Plus
July,
we're booted
right?
out of this building,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
That'll be a whole new building when you come back. We'll have windows that won't leak. Squirrels not in the attic.
Go ahead and propose what,
What about August 6th, 7th, or 8th? Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday?
7th and 8th I won't be able to do, but the 6th I could.
Is that my calendar?
Yep. The only thing you have is the Berlin department head meeting, which they haven't been having, so.
Yeah, I won't be there.
I have a standing meeting that's at 9 on the 6th.
But we could maybe meet at another,
Yeah, we could meet another time that day.
Can you
I'm
meet in
wide
the
open after that. all day.
Afternoon, or do you have a problem getting out midday?
It's probably more convenient to do
Afternoon?
At the end of the day?
mid-afternoon,
Yeah.
late afternoon,
But
whatever
you pick
works.
your time, what time would work for you?
Is 4 too late, or would you rather do 3?
Can we do 3?
Yes.
3 p.m. And is that for an hour or hour and a half?
Hopefully
We
an
don't
hour.
seem to be able to do an hour for some reason, but in this case, the work we're doing is,
I think because it's 5 o'clock, it's probably we should. I had to hold somebody here till 5:30 in the summer.
well, we're talking about starting at 3.
Oh, 3, I'm
3,
sorry. Yes,
yeah.
good,
Yeah.
okay.
So 3 to 4 on August 6th.
3 to 4:30, you're saying?
Well, no, I'm
To be
just
safe.
saying, I've never seen us get out in an hour, even when we say we're going to, so I'd say if people don't mind, let's say 3 to 4:30, and if we can do it in an hour, let's
Yeah.
try to do that.
Yeah, that's,
Good.
okay, so 3 o'clock, August 6th.
Good.
So, do you think we will have the meeting on the 26th, and we should be able to?
I have to
So,
check
was
with
that close?
Lori and Angela and Keith.
I'm good.
Yeah, so Lori's good. I don't think Jim will be back. Susan won't be available. So if Lori, Angela and Keith are available, we'll have a quorum. If Angela or Keith is not available, then we'll have to start from scratch. Because that would not be a quorum either. So let me touch base with those two, and I may have to call Keith.
All right.
It's good, thank you.
Thank you.
Well,